Hello class, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on these notes so that you can copy them down. Here's the first half for you. You can pause it if you like. And here is the second half. Alrighty, now today's lesson is going to be a little tough, so I want to make sure that you are paying very close attention to these notes. We'll go over them in class. So the first lesson we're going to be looking at of new content is how to divide a fraction by a whole number. Okay, we know how to divide whole numbers by whole numbers. We know how to divide decimals. But today it's fraction by whole numbers. Question is, how do I divide a fraction by a whole number? And there's two main methods that we're going to look at in our notes today. The first one is here on the left side, and it is called partitive division, and the second one we're going to look at is on the right side called area division. Those names you don't really necessarily need to memorize right away, but that's what we're going to take a look at today. So let's take a look at our first column first, the partitive division. Okay, in order to divide a fraction by a whole number, here we see 2/3 divided by 4. All the notes are broken down into steps. So the first step is we draw a model of the fraction and we label it. So I'll zoom out a little bit so you can see the label. Okay, so we see that here I have drawn the model of 2/3. You see the 3 boxes, 1, 2, 3, and 2 of them are shaded. 2. And the big thing down here is that we've labeled them. This will become very important soon. So that's 0/3 obviously, 1/3, 2/3, and then 3/3. So make sure that you have those labels when you draw these models. So get rid of that. Okay, so step 1 done. We draw the model of the fraction and we label it. Then we come down here, and step 2, once we have that model, just like this, we divide the shaded portion into equal amounts of the whole number. So if you remember, our whole number back here was 4. So what we're going to do is we'll go to our shaded portion. We'll zoom in a little bit. Oh, doesn't want to do that for us. So here's our shaded portion. We've got the 1/3 and the 2/3. And then what I've done is I've come in here and I've divided just this shaded portion. I'll go ahead and maybe give it a little bit of a highlighter here. Yeah. So this 2/3 has been now split up into 4 sections. If you see that here, we've got 1 section, 2 sections, 3 sections, and 4 sections. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so now that we've split up 2/3 into 4 equal sections, let's come down here to step 3. Step 3 says that we need to identify what each new section is worth. And here's the big thing. This hint is very important. In order to figure out, I'm going to try and squeeze this in here so you can see it. Okay. In order to figure out what these new sections are worth, we need to scale up our fractions by the whole number and then fill in the front. And I know that's going to sound kind of confusing, so in order to explain that, let me zoom back up here to our previous example. Okay, so when it says to scale up the fractions by the whole number, our whole number, if you remember, was 4. We're going to scale these up by 4, and this will help big time. So we'll come in here to our fractions, and we'll scale them up by 4. So, we've got 0/3 times 4 over 4 1/3 times 4 over 4, 2/3 times 4 over 4, and 3/3 times 4 over 4. Okay, so this one will be 0/12, 4/12, 8/12, and then obviously 12/12. Okay, but we have all of that. I know it's kind of messy. We have all of that written down here. That's how I have come up with down here where you see 0/12, 2/12, 4/12, 6/12, and 8/12. So we've really just renamed these fractions. 0/12 is essentially the same thing as 1/3, and if you follow our original line here, the 1/3 is the same thing as 4/12, and our second original line, 8/12, is the same thing as 2/3. Now what we've done, if you remember, I'll go back and redraw these in to make it a little bit more clear. These were our original lines, this, and the shaded portion was these here. Okay, so that's the 2/3. Alrighty, kind of hard to see underneath there, so I'll get rid of those. Alright, so that's our 2/3, and the new lines that we drew when we split it up into 4 go along here. Okay? So if we're looking at how to label these new blue lines that we've drawn, we think, okay, what's halfway between 0/12 and 4/12? Halfway between 0 and 4 is 2. Alright, so we're counting by 2/12. Each of these sections is worth 2/12. That's why I wrote 2/12 in each of the sections. So 0 plus 2 is 2/12. 2/12 plus 2/12 is 4/12. 4/12 plus 2/12 is 6/12. And 6/12 plus 2/12 is 8/12. So we know that each of these sections is worth 2/12. And really, the question we're asking in the original, which was what is 2/3 divided by 4, is how much is each one of these sections worth? So we know each section is worth 2/12. So we come down here, our answer we see is 2/12, but really if you simplify 2/12, that equals 1/6. Alrighty, I know that may have been a lot for you, a little confusing perhaps, but we will practice this and practice this and practice this in class, and it'll become much more understandable. Anyway, so let's take a look at the second model that we'll use to divide fractions, and that's called the area division. So we're going to look at the exact same problem. It says 2/3 divided by 4. I happen to like this model better, but step one nonetheless for area division, just like the other, is draw a model of the fraction. Same thing we did on the other side. Drew 3 boxes, split them up, and shaded 2 of them. So here you see 0/3, 1/3, 2/3, and 3/3. Pretty simple. Step 2, however, is where it becomes different. What we're going to do now is we are going to take that 2/3 that we created before, and then we are going to divide it horizontally by whatever the whole number is. So if that's kind of hard to follow, let me rehash it out for you. So what we did is we redrew our 2/3, so that's why we did this box. And then, so here's our 2/3. 2/3. And now, second step is to take our whole number, and remember, our whole number was 4, and then we divide the entire area of this whole figure horizontally, and we create 4 new sections. So here you see 1, 2, 3, and 4. All right. So what we've done there is we've taken our, again, whoops, get rid of that, sorry. We've taken our 2/3, split it up into 4. Okay. And then the third step in the area model, or the area division strategy, is to we're going to count how many groups of the whole number. And remember, for this example, our whole number was 4. Count up how many groups of 4, and that's going to be our numerator. And then we're going to count the total number of sections in the model. Okay? So, within the shaded portion, we need to count how many groups of 4. So, I'm going to go ahead and label those here. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is one group of 4 in the shaded portion. And then again we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. There's another group of 4 in the shaded portion. Okay, so however many groups of the whole number, so groups of the whole number, that's going to be the numerator in our answer. So we know the numerator is going to be 2 because we see 1 and 2 groups. Now that we've gotten this numerator, we find the denominator by counting the total number of sections in the model. That'll give us a denominator. So you could just see this as count the number of boxes, the total number of boxes. So we can come through and count them, and I've labeled them here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So there's a total of 12 boxes. So 2 is our numerator and 12 is our denominator. And what we've done down here is I wrote the answer. We've got 2/12, which equals 1/6 if you reduce it. So we see that we find the same answer. Whoopsie daisy. We've got 1/6 and 1/6. Just two different ways of getting at the answer. Hope that helps.